Jake Paul is a clown and Ryan is a baby clown. That's what they do. They try to get fame off of other people's victories and things like that. So
he pulled fight next. He just called out Tank.
I think he deserves a fight. He can fight Julio Ramirez, or he can fight the Mexican monster, David Benavidez.
And create an amazing sports story. And so I set that goal for myself. And I want to be impeccable with my word and stay committed and prove to myself that I can do this.
Gervonta Davis clapped back at Jake Paul's Callout, labeling him a straight-up clown chasing fame and fortune. Still, Tank didn't fully dismiss it. He admitted there's a chance he takes the fight later on.
when you retire, do you see yourself going the Jake Paul route? I laugh. I don't want to say it. Nigga, say it. You helping everybody else out, so say it, nigga. Yeah, I would. I would. Who was the first celebrity you fight? Jake. Yeah, I fight him for that money. Get him like 190, 98, 200. No, 195. Definitely be in the gym, so I would consider him. He got to fight an actual fighter, like a fighter. Who was somebody you could see him fighting, like a real you?
After his win over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., Jake Paul didn't hold back. He called out Gervonta Tank Davis and vowed to take on boxing's best. Jake fired shots at the elite. Tank, in response, acknowledged Jake's hunger, but let's face it, plenty of fans are questioning if Jake's anywhere near ready for a fighter like Tank for the pressure that brings.
A lot more than that. I want tougher fighters. I want to be world champion. Zerto looks slow as shit tonight. That'd be easy work too. Badu Jack, I want everybody. Anthony Joshua, Gervonta, and Tommy, stop running.
Jose Benavidez Sr., the veteran trainer and father of David Benavidez, publicly backed Jake Paul following his most recent win. He praised Jake's sharp performance and claimed he's now worthy of bigger names like Tank Davis or even David. According to him, this is the kind of shake-up boxing needs a mix of flashy showmanship with serious competition in the ring.
Tired, he was blocking and taking all his shots, but I think he just got tired, and couldn't execute it. So Jake Paul did a great job.
Who should Jake Paul fight next? He just called out Tank.
I think he deserves a fight, he can fight Julio Ramirez, or he can fight the Mexican monster, David Benavidez,
You won that fight?
Yeah, he deserves to fight all these guys. I think it will be a great fight, and I think he did good. He deserves an opportunity to fight for the world title.
What would happen if he fought David?
What would happen?
What would happen if he fought David?
Well, I think David's in another. I think David's in another level, but let's give this guy an opportunity to fight for a world title.
Jake Paul's victory over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. didn't just boost his rep, it rattled the division. Per Boxing Kingdom, if Jake scores another win tonight, he'll officially enter the top 15 cruiserweight rankings under major bodies. That gives him eligibility for voluntary title defenses. And with Jake's market power, he can practically choose his opponents. His brand gives him serious clout, not just a ranking. He's breaking barriers with every fight. Meanwhile, Gervonta Tank Davis remains one of the most dangerous pound-for-pound fighters alive. But Jake's influence outside the ropes is hard to match. His social media reach, promotional genius, and celebrity aura give him unique leverage. Many fans and analysts agree, Tank might have the superior skills, but Jake's media dominance makes him the bigger name in today's sport that matters. Jake's fame reaches far beyond boxing, and that's exactly why people are paying attention. He's changing how fights get made.
What up, fight fans? Now, Gervonta Davis just called out Jake Paul after Jake Paul had his fight with Mike Tyson. Now, we all know that Gervonta Davis is a beast of a boxer, and skill-wise, he's a lot better than Jake Paul. Would it be smart to pair those two up in a fight? Would Jake Paul be too big for Gervonta Davis? What do you guys think?
Jake Paul's mission is bigger than boxing. He wants to build a legacy that lasts. He says this run is about more than punches. It's about writing history. From being an internet lightning rod to a ranked fighter, Jake's silencing doubters with every step, and he's not taking his foot off the gas.
In a ceremony that I was doing, he said that you have to become world champion to inspire so many kids and create an amazing sports story. And so I set that goal for myself, and I want to be impeccable with my word and stay committed and prove to myself that I can do this and become world champion in the world's hardest sport in roughly 6 to 7 years. Because I think it can be one of the most relatable and inspiring sports stories of all time, and no one thought it was possible. Nobody. Look, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, people laughed at me and Mel Lewis to fucking get, then Nate Robinson, then Ben. Come on. So, at the end of the day, that's my why, and I'm dead set on becoming world champion.
Jake Paul's manager looked back at the Tommy Fury fight, saying Jake was raw but never backed down. That moment proved he had guts. Since then, Jake's grown smarter with every bout and is stacking up wins. His team says the next fight could be this winter, November or December, and yes, Gervonta Davis is on the list of potential opponents.
Is Jake Paul seeing more from this fight as a boxer and maybe probably through fight or this fight? What do you reckon he loved boxing?
I think he said it best in there himself. When he fought Tommy Fury, he wasn't even a boxer yet. He was learning how to box, right? Now, 2.5 years later, he's a true boxer. The loss to Tommy Fury was the greatest gift in Jake Paul's life. Had he beaten Tommy Fury, which was a split decision loss, right? Not a unanimous, not a majority, a split decision loss, he wouldn't be the fighter that he is today. So thank you, Tom.
Do you expect Jake Paul to fight in November, December time? Is that what you see out there?
Yeah, November or December is the time I really like to do it.
Jake Paul's performance against Chavez Jr. earned respect. Ryan Garcia even tweeted, "Jake did his thing. Outboxed Chavez Jr. praise like that from a rising star carries weight." Veteran Antonio Tarver also weighed in. He complimented Jake's growth but warned against rushing things. Jake's improving. Sure, but Tarver says he's not elite yet. It's going to take more time and experience. The talent is there, no doubt, but Tarver's point is clear. Don't throw Jake into deep waters too soon.
But Jake was impressive, you know. Surprisingly, he was impressive. He's definitely improving. You know, he got a good team with him and working on some things. But, you know, to become an elite fighter, it's like, bro, it's miles away from what, you know, they can comprehend. You feel me? And so I'm just watching the evolution. You know what I mean? But I see a lot of things from my optics. You know, every time I, you know, break it down, I'm not being critical. I'm just telling you the truth. You know what I mean? His jab looked good today, you know, but he knew the guy wasn't throwing nothing back. So when you let your hands go and you know nothing's coming back, you kind of get comfortable. You know, so when you're going up against better fighters, they not only gonna let their hands go, but when you throw yours, they coming back with something. So, you know, Chavez didn't bring that to the table. He didn't bring that to the table. But Jake looked good tonight. The body work was good. But what I liked was his composure. He didn't get wild. He didn't get out of control, swinging wild and just fighting. He stayed composed. He stayed in his form. And that is evolution in the boxing game. He was more technical than that.
A large portion of the boxing community believes a Gervonta Davis versus Jake Paul fight makes no competitive sense. Tank's still operating in his prime and has real contenders waiting at his weight. On the other hand, critics argue that Jake's still more hype than substance and hasn't done enough to deserve a matchup with Tank. At least not yet.
That Jake Paul might actually fight Gervonta Tank Davis. This can't be real. When it came up a couple of months ago, I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna cover this because there's no way there's no way they're really gonna do it because it makes no sense. Why would you do that for him? Outside of it, like, okay, you can look at it like an exhibition, which it will be, and we'll take a look at some of the rule set for it. But Gervonta Davis is one of, if not the best, biggest names at 135 pounds, and is an active in his prime fighter. I don't want to hear this similar to Floyd and Logan thing, because at that point, Floyd was retired. Floyd had done all he needed to do in the sport. Tank is still in his prime, still has multiple high-level opponents that he needs to fight. And you can say, oh, you know, the Jake would be a one-off. Side quest. That's fine, but that just tells me that Tank doesn't care about being a high-level champion in the sport anymore. It tells me that he's done competitively in the sport. If he takes a fight with Jake Paul, it tells me he's done. And that's unfortunate. Yeah, Tank has been talking about retirement. If he goes this route, it's almost certain. Like, it's pack it up. It's over with. Because the fight makes no sense. It doesn't even make sense for Jake. For all the things Jake's talking about doing, it makes no sense for him. Again, money, sure. It makes dollars make sense, okay, fine. But I want to see Jake in competitive matchups where I am interested in the outcome. I'm not interested in this. I'm not interested in the outcome of this. I was interested in Floyd versus Logan because there was an idea that Floyd was a little slower, a little older, and Logan would be able to knock him out. If Jake knocks Tank out, so what? What does that do for him? Because he said he could beat Canelo. He said he could beat Anthony Joshua. This one to me, like, I've gotten on board with a lot of Jake fights because they've made sense. Right? To me, they've made sense. Even Julio Cesar Chavez, after he's already beaten the guy that beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., beat Anderson Silva,
Then again, some fans believe Jake's size and progress might trouble Tank. Gervonta Davis usually competes at much lighter weights, and stepping up to fight someone Jake's size could be risky. Sure, Tank's got elite power, precision, ring IQ, but the size gap might be too wide. That alone could give Jake a real shot at pulling off an unexpected win.
I would love to see Tank fight Jake Paul. I would love to see Tank show how unskilled he is and too small for the unexperienced Jake Paul, who would be too big for him, pause, and use his size and beat the out of Tank. He always tweet about, type about, got something to say, like he really running shit, but he stays little ass at that lightweight class, but being a bigger, smaller dude that can only beat the smaller dudes. And unfortunately, I would love to see the Tank fans look on their face as they pull a mask off and all the rabies and all the disinfection disease, they've been clogged up their brains and their ears and shit over the years watching Jake Paul beat the fuck out of the small version of the wannabe hype job that's not skilled enough to use his size and speed. I want the fight. They both fight in the same lane. They content creators. They circus acts and stuff, so Tank would be right up his alley fighting a Jake Paul. I'm for it, so let's push for the fight. I got Jake Paul beating the tall shit out of Tank because Tank's not skilled enough to actually beat Jake Paul.
Jake Paul has made it crystal clear he doesn't just want to box, he wants to inspire. Choosing to fight Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. wasn't just showmanship, it was a calculated move. Jake wants to prove you can rise from nothing and make it big. He's not only chasing belts, he's chasing something greater, a legacy that will last.
Our world champion, he is the most experienced fighter I've fought to date. And it's going to be a really good test of my skills, and depending on the performance that I put on, the sanctioning bodies in boxing will give me a ranking, and once I have that ranking, I'm able to go and fight for a world title. So this can set me up to become world champion and to be able to attain and get a world championship fight done. Yeah, I think a lot about inspiring the next generation. That's a big part of the reason I'm still so adamant about becoming world champion, because it will prove to kids that they can go into something at zero and make it all the way to the top in 6 to 7 years time if they fully set their mind to it. So
even with Jake Paul's impressive win, some fans remain skeptical. Critics labeled the bout suspicious, noting Chavez Jr.'s lack of aggression. One user tweeted, "Jake Paul fight clearly rigged now, way a real boxer sat there for 8 rounds, barely throwing a punch, then suddenly looks fresh and starts actually boxing in the last 2. Nah, you can't tell me nothing. He was told to lose and just make it look close at the end." But while the debate swirls, Jake's flipping the script. With viral clips, big deals, and creative promotion, he's elevating the game, especially for undercard fighters, and keeping fans more engaged than ever.
Jake Paul is unequivocally the most successful fighter in history 4 years in. No one comes close. No one. You couldn't list one that comes close, including Brock Lesnar if you include his WWE career. 4 years in terms of what he's done in terms of box office, pay-per-view, impact, helping other boxers, because he had a platform, he had awareness, and he's got the focus and discipline to drive with it.
Jake Paul handled Gervonta Davis's remarks with surprising composure. Instead of firing back or stirring drama, he gave a respectful nod, saying, "He's a great fighter and surprised me a few times." That response showed Jake's maturity and that he respects Tank's skill and knows when to give credit where due.
Your thoughts on Tank Davis?
Man, he's a great fighter. He's a great fighter. He's surprised me a couple of times. We've had some word exchanges.
Yes.
But it's all for fun. I hope this fight with Ryan Garcia happens.
Who you leaning on?
It's a 50-50 fight, in my opinion. You know, Gervonta hasn't shown the ability to win a lot of rounds against taller fighters, and then he relies on the knockout in the later rounds. It's worked for him, but if Ryan could avoid that, I think it'll be his power and speed will be and range will be a problem for Gervonta. But if Ryan gets caught, we've seen what Luke Campbell did.
Yeah.
And Gervonta is obviously a way bigger puncher than Luke. So it's really, in my eyes, the fight could go either way.
Online critics are beginning to question whether Gervonta Davis really wants action at 140 pounds. Some fans claim Tank tends to avoid risky fights, and they believe he might sidestep someone like Jake Paul. Why? Because Jake's unpredictable and dangerous in unorthodox ways, and that might just be enough for Tank to avoid a matchup entirely. at least for now.
Jake Paul said him and Tank were in negotiations to actually fight. Jake Paul would have probably knocked Tank out. Like, we gotta be honest here. The fight was gonna be at 195, and which means Jake Paul cannot come over the weight limit of 195. I think he could have made that weight. I don't know where it would have been. I don't know any more stipulations. And it said it was gonna be a normal boxing match, and where Jake Paul probably would have beat the shit out of Tank Davis. I'm gonna call cap. I don't think Tank would have actually fought Jake Paul. Tank is scared to fight, somebody at 140. I don't see him fighting somebody 195, 200 plus pounds. That's just ridiculous. That's unrealistic. I don't think Tank is taking that type of risk. Now, I know a lot of you guys like, oh, Jake sucks. Tank is this, Tank is that. When you're that much larger than a man, your boxing ability goes out the window. It just really does not matter how much of a boxer you are. The guy is way larger than you. Like, I don't think Gervonta could do anything to even reach his face. He's 6'1". But you guys let me know, man. Who would y'all have if Jake Paul and Tank Davis fought? Like I said, I'm putting all my money on Jake.
Before Gervonta Davis versus Jake Paul becomes more than talk. Tank has other obligations. A rematch with Lamont Roach seems to be next on the schedule, and many fans agree it needs to happen. Before any high-profile crossover bouts like this one even come close to being finalized.
Yeah, you're seeing what I'm seeing. Tank Davis versus Jake Paul. I don't buy it for a second, but apparently they were in negotiations to have this fight happen if Tank Davis beats his previous opponent, which obviously ended in a draw. Which means he's obviously going to go and rematch Lamont Roach in his next fight. But come on, Tank Davis versus Jake Paul. Jake Paul is a cruiserweight / heavyweight. Tank Davis is a lightweight. This is Jake Paul's mindset. Okay, I'll fight a legit professional boxer, OAP. I'll fight a legitimate professional boxer who's his age, loses. Okay, I'll fight another professional boxer who's half his weight. Honestly, I don't care how big Jake Paul is, I genuinely do think that Tank Davis would beat Jake Paul. I think Tank Davis would be too fast, too slick, outbox him, move around. He wouldn't knock him out, obviously. I don't think he'd knock him out because of how big Jake Paul is, but he would outbox him 100%. But anyway guys, let me know what you guys think about this potential fight. I really hope it does not happen because Jake Paul needs to fight a legitimate pro who isn't a taxi driver, who isn't old, and isn't half his weight.
Some believe Gervonta Davis moving up in weight could lead to major opportunities. It would test his adaptability and bring thrilling matchups, especially against big names. Like Jake Paul for Tank, it's not just about raw power, it's about proving he can climb weight classes and still dominate, fight after fight, opponent after opponent.
Tank Davis says that he's bored with boxing. He said if paid enough, he'd make an MMA debut. He said back in the day in the streets, he used to throw a few punches and then he'd go for the takedown and throw him on the back.
Fans are stunned that Gervonta Davis isn't even ranked in the current top 10 pound-for-pound list, despite his perfect record. That stat alone has sparked serious debate around his recognition in the sport. So now the question is, does fighting Jake Paul elevate Tank's legacy or hurt it? For some, it's a marketing risk. For others, it's a smart business move in today's ever-changing world of crossover mega fights.
Gervonta Davis is not a top 5 pound-for-pound fighter right now. He's arguably not even in the top 10 pound-for-pound right now. Despite how cool this picture is, it does not get him into the pound-for-pound list. Even though we could say that he could probably beat everyone in the lightweight division, even though I think he loses to Shakur, he hasn't done it, and he probably isn't gonna do it. But what would it take for him to get to the #1 pound-for-pound spot? Let's go over what he would have to do to reach #1. Well, first off, he'd obviously have to go undisputed in the lightweight division. And even though that would be great, I think that only cracks him like #4. Because the only one in the top 10 pound-for-pound in the lightweight division is maybe Shakur. But realistically, he's gonna have to do more than just go undisputed in the lightweight division. So obviously, he'd have to go up to 140 because there's no way he's making 130. And then he'd have to beat a dude like Teofimo, and he'd probably have to beat Devin Haney as well. And I think that could probably get him the #1 spot. But yeah, we can sit here and say Tank is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters right now, which I think he's one of the most talented, and I think he could do most of what I said. However, hypotheticals aren't going to work with pound-for-pound listing.